Okay, so we will call to order the meeting of the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Project Plan Citizen Oversight Committee, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our roll call.
Okay, Lorraine Koss. Here. Charlie Venuto.
Here.
Vinnie Toronto.
Here.
Don Dice. Here. John Windsor.
Here.
Bobby Putnam.
Here.
Laura Lee Thompson.
Here.
Stephanie Ely.
Here.
Kimberly is not here yet. Todd Swindle.
Here.
Kurt Smith is not here yet. Barbara Scanlon. Here. Eric Mann is.
Here.
All right, and Kurt is now here. Good morning. I just missed your name, so I'll mark you as present. Yay.
Okay, great. We do
have a
have
quorum.
we do have a quorum. Just to let everyone know, I do have to leave early, and so at that time when I step out, Vinny will take over as chair. Move on next to approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to progress reports. Virginia.
Hey, good morning. This month is also quarterly reports, so I'm going to skip most of the progress report that you're going to hear about shortly under quarterly reports. Just want to point out a few things that aren't projects. So down under work underway this month, we've been busy with the 2023 audit, sharing files as requested with the county's auditors, and the new $100 million Indian River Lagoon grant program. The deadline for submitting projects is the end of the month, so we're busy submitting more than $100 million worth of requests. We'll find out what ranks best and try to secure as much of that as we can. And Matt Culver has been very busy with derelict vessel removal this month, another 8 out of the lagoon. Then on the other side, presentations this month. The Florida Watermen's Alliance had an event on July 22nd, so thanks to Brandon and Vinny and Laura Lee for attending that, and we have one of their speakers here on your agenda today, so we're looking forward to that. The Marine Resources Council had one of your very own, Don Dice, as a speaker on seagrass at one of their lunch and learns. And then either this later September, maybe before or after your next meeting, AECOM is supposed to be here with their algae harvester, and we're working on a save the date media event with them, which you would all be invited to, and if more than one of you wants to come, we can advertise that so that there's no sunshine issues. So we're looking forward to the arrival of their big harvesting equipment and see how it does in our brackish waters. And then in October, the Marine Resources Council is hosting another low-impact development conference that conflicts with your Oversight Committee meeting, but as far as spreading the word for others to attend, wanted to highlight that. And then under future topics for special presentations, next month we have the first 2 there in the lineup scheduled. So Lauren Hall with the St. Johns River Water Management District will be presenting on their seagrass sightings from all of their summer seagrass transect work. And Holly Abeels with University of Florida IFAS Sea Grant is going to be presenting on the horseshoe crab spawning in the lagoon. That's my report.
Okay, thank you very much.
I do have one other thing I would like to share. Unfortunately, last week, there was a fish kill in the south end of the county, off Rocky Point and across the lagoon to Wexford, behind Publix down in the South Beaches. And so I just wanted to share a few photographs of that event and talk about a little bit that we know so far. So the graph on the bottom of the slide here is from Austin Fox at Florida Tech. You know, we have partnered with him and the National Estuary Program to fund some oxygen sensors placed on the sediment, so at the bottom of the lagoon, to give us different data than the continuous monitoring stations that are mid-water. And so you see on this graph, the red line represents the Mico area, and then the greenish gray line is Rum Cove, which is just north of Malabar. And so you see in the orange area that's shaded Sebastian algae bloom, you see the oxygen going way up in the day and then dropping way down every night. That is, you know, the telltale signal of a significant bloom in that area, generating oxygen as the bloom photosynthesizes during the day and then using up oxygen as it respires at night. We see that signal again in the second shaded area, and you see that instead of it spiking, you know, way high every day, it spikes way high, and then the bloom starts to crash. And so as that bloom crashes, it's still using oxygen at night, but it's not generating oxygen in the day, and that's when a fish kill was reported in the Sebastian River, and blue crabs were dying in the Sebastian River area. And then you see the Rum Cove start the same signal, and then as it crashes, that was when we had the Malabar fish kill that is photographed. Next slide, please. So we also looked for the signal in the satellite maps that we share with you weekly, and you can see the hotter areas, the yellow to orange to red bloom areas, both in that Malabar Rocky Point area and further north near Dragon Point. So the Dragon Point area, it moved up into sort of a more uncomfortable chlorophyll area. The graphs in the middle are graphs of the variation in chlorophyll for different zones of the lagoon. And so we were watching that bloom. It never got to the really harmful stage, but it was worrisome. Whereas the one down at Rocky Point, you'll see that the box and whiskers, those whiskers extend up into the red zone at the top of the graph. And so, that's when things got really bad down there. Yes.
So are the properties that are near this on septic?
Rocky Point is. We've done a lot of septic upgrades in that, along Rocky Point, in that vicinity, yes. But, this is, the temperatures are so warm, the water is quite warm. It's not really bad in the central part of the lagoon, but along the shorelines where it's shallow, it just gets super hot. And in fact, the day of this fish kill, the afternoon, often we're having these heavy rains every afternoon. And so that drops a lot of cooler water that beats some oxygen into the surface. That did not happen the afternoon before this fish kill. And so I would guess that those shallow areas on both the Rocky Point side and the Publix Wexford side got really, really hot and just couldn't hold oxygen, in addition to the bloom crashing and using up oxygen. Yeah.
So the big yellow box that's in the northern Banana River, that I think that's an impound inside the Space Center.
Yes.
Is there anything that we can do to, because I think fish kills happen there pretty regularly. Is there anything that can be done to help that impounded area?
So we have asked that question a number of times, and they are now talking to us about potentially, when we have the AECOM algae harvester here, testing it in that area as well. So hopefully we can make that happen and see if that makes a difference.
One question on that. So just on the response, Virginia, did we need to send anybody out with like our KBB contact to do any cleanup or anything?
Terri and I both looked at the area, and the fish are they're scattered, and then they're clustered in little alcoves. They were already, by the second day I went back out, they were being buried in the sand. They're right along the shoreline. There's no good access. There's no place to put a dumpster. So it would be very difficult, and I don't think there would be a huge benefit to the lagoon.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to our revenue graph and financial statement.
Okay. Hello, good morning. So we have our revenue cumulative graph. So we receive 4.2 million collections for May. That puts us at 333 million collected so far. Now, down to the monthly. We have 296 million in revenues assigned as of this fiscal year. And on the expenditure side, we have 58 million assigned to projects, and we have spent 16 million so far. And then we have our financial tables. Very long. Okay. Oh, like this one? Oh, gotcha. And we have our grant table. We kind of switched it up and put the inactive grants. We added a table at the very end. So with the tables that are like table 1, 2, and so on, it really shows you what we're focusing on right now, the grants that are active, and then the ones that we've completed. Like, it puts more attention on what we're doing right now. So see table 6. Thank you. Any questions?
One question as we're heading towards session, is there, obviously, there's lots of grant programs continuing to be out there. Any specific plans for specific legislative allocations through the appropriations process, or either at the state or federal level?
Right now, we are so focused on the deadline for the 100 million.
Okay.
And the other water quality grants, the innovative grants, the resilience grants, they're all the end of this month. As soon as we get those done, we'll be focusing on the legislative. It's kind of the same project pool that are our highest priority. So we will be more selective with our legislative requests, but it'll be a subset of what we're working on now.
The same project list?
Yeah.
Okay, but the intent's to try to pursue some of those dedicated appropriations as well. I think that just came out this week, so, and it's, I believe,
Yes.
the end of October is the deadline, so somewhere in there.
September,
So I think, well, our lobbyists would like them by the end of September.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
I will add, we are, maybe I already said this, we are applying for way more money than the 100 million that's available. And I know other communities all along the lagoon are also applying for more, but we want it to be clear what the demand is. I know that 100 million was in the governor's executive order as a recurring revenue, so we want to make sure that everyone's aware that we could definitely benefit from it being a recurring revenue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, project performance table update.
Okay, so the tables are in here for all of the projects, and I also have a PowerPoint presentation to update for all the projects. I just want to reiterate that the highlights in yellow show progress made from the previous quarter, and this table also lines up with your financial table, so you can see the financials on one side and the progress on another.
Terry,
Yes.
for folks that haven't seen this before, the red means what?
Red means there was progress not made in the past quarter.
Thanks.
So this is reporting from April 1st through June 30th, so this is the third quarter of the fiscal year. Our first project category is public education. So we have 7 projects in the budget right now. 1 is complete and 4 are underway. So we made progress on the fertilizer and septic maintenance campaigns. Grass clippings is on hold right now, and that, along with our irrigation and stormwater best management practice education campaigns, will be going out to bid soon. And the Restore Our Shores is now 25% complete, and this quarter they continued work with their oyster, clams, seagrass gardening, outreach, and reef building. We have wastewater treatment facility upgrades for reclaimed water. There are 7 projects. 4 are complete. The Rockledge facility is currently under construction and is about 30% complete. This quarter, they installed the rebar and poured the slabs and began forming the walls. We have 2 currently in design. The Melbourne Grant Street Water Reclamation Facility opened bids for construction June 15th, and the West Melbourne Ray Bullard facility is at 80% complete for design. We have 2 projects for rapid infiltration and spray field upgrades. First one completed was the Long Point Park upgrade. That one was completed a while ago. And the Sterling House condo is uncontracted. For package plant connections, we have 4 projects in the plan. 1 is complete. We are currently working with Willow Lakes and the Cove to secure additional funding, grant funding, to have those projects move forward. And I just wanted to point out the location. This one is on right on the lagoon. This is the Cove, and then Willow Lakes US 1 is over here, and then the lagoon is over here. So they're both within close proximity to the lagoon. Our sewer lateral projects have 6 in the plan. 4 are complete and 1 is underway. There have been 839 repairs completed with the countywide repair initiative, and 340 of those were funded through the SORL program. And then here's some photos of the broken joint right here, and then a vitrified clay pipe that's also has the joint broken off. So these were just leaking right into the yard. Our septic upgrades, we have 625 septic upgrades in the plan and 876 quick connects. This quarter, we received an additional 117 septic upgrade applications and completed 66. And then with our quick connects, we received an additional 227 applications and completed 20, and these were the biggest numbers we've seen out of any quarter for these projects, so I was pretty excited about those. For septic removal, we have 47 projects in the plan. 3 are complete. We have 9 in construction at the moment. The Miko sewer line extension is what's a little further along now, but at the reporting period, it was 59% complete, and they are working on the power and lift station. And then South Central C is about 83% construction complete, and they are also working on their lift station there. So the City of Melbourne has 6 projects underway, and Satellite Beach is almost complete with their Hedgecock, Grabowski, and DeSoto Fields connections. And the South Beaches O and P projects, the bids have been drafted, so we just found this out yesterday. So that's good news.
What's O and P, real quick?
The locations,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they're
Oh, Zone O.
Zone O
Yeah.
and P, yeah, sorry.
you're good.
Septic to sewer projects in the South Beaches.
I thought we were throwing
Melbourne Beach.
acronyms around. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything.
The remaining septic projects are in various stages of design and making progress. For stormwater, we have 240 projects in the plan, and 40 have been completed. This quarter, the City of Cocoa North Fisk floating wetlands was completed, and there's a picture of their floating wetlands in the pond. The City of Melbourne High School and Funeral Home baffle box is currently under construction and about 25% complete. The box was recently installed, and they have a very nice sign.
Danny's
Oh,
gonna
you have
say
something to say? Okay.
I'm just going to add, I'm going to backtrack to the Grant Place, Grant Street.
Wharf?
Yeah, I don't do sewer, sorry, guys. That bid was advertised. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting because of the nature of the beast that we were dealing with, and we only had one person show up. So we have broken that bid into 2 pieces at this point, and we're in the process of re-advertising. So we did get an extension for it through the board, but just so you know, we are working our way through it. We just weren't comfortable going with just one bidder.
Who knew they were the only bidder.
Who knew they were the only bidder. So, you know, when you know you're the only one out there, your numbers get to be a little
Funky.
not necessarily economical.
Competitive.
And then with we call this the Harbor City Treatment Train Baffle Box number 1. It's got a long name, it's convoluted. We had a unique situation with this one in that we've never had this problem before. We knew it was an 84-inch concrete pipe going into the box, and you typically have a 6-inch wall thickness. Yeah, for some reason, this is type 4 concrete pipe, so it's an 8-inch wall thickness. So the pipe didn't fit in the box when it got there. So we've had to do some engineering on the fly to make sure we can get all the pipe connections going. Box is all in, though, and it's looking well. We've got TVing scheduled for next week to make sure that all the pipe pieces that are all in place meet, and we should be able to finish up our grant pretty quickly. Sorry about that.
I was curious, the sign that's in that slide, is that associated with the project?
Yes, that's explaining how a baffle box works.
Okay.
It's not the easiest to read here, but you can go visit it.
That's great. Glad to see that.
And I see those the logos in the bottom.
Yes.
Sorrel, City of Melbourne.
This was part of the recommendation from the COC to add
Yeah.
signage with the logo, so this is one of the first ones.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Okay, where am I? The Satellite Beach Lori Lane project is about 90% complete with construction. All the pipes and bioabsorption of activated material has been installed, and site restoration is underway. The St. Johns River Water Management District Crane Creek M1 Canal Flow Restoration Project began construction. So far, it's pretty much been land clearing, but it's about 5% complete. We also have 13 projects in the design phase, and this quarter, we contracted with the City of Melbourne for the Cherry Street and Spring Creek baffle boxes and the City of Titusville Riverfront Center nutrient removing filtration boxes and the Commons and City Hall tree boxes. For vegetation harvesting, we have 10 projects in the plan, 5 have been completed. This quarter, the Basin 1398 sand dollar vegetation harvesting was completed and is estimated to remove 222 pounds of total nitrogen. The unincorporated countywide vegetation harvesting project got underway. This quarter, they harvested Mitchell Ellington Pond, 102,000 pounds of vegetation there, and Chase Hammock Pond for 263,000 pounds. And they were in the process of doing the Chain of Lakes Pond B up in Titusville, and we're not quite finished. But so far, they've removed 143,000 pounds of vegetation. And Melbourne Tillman is also underway. This quarter, they removed 69,000 pounds of vegetation. Overall, the project is 88% complete for a total of 1.8 million pounds of vegetation harvested and almost 14,000 pounds of total nitrogen removed from the system. Our muck and interstitial treatment projects, we have 20 in the plan for our complete. We have Grand Canal and Sykes Creek underway. Grand Canal is about 56% complete and has removed approximately 270,000 cubic yards of muck. And the Sykes Creek has removed about 68,000 cubic yards of muck and is approximately 64% complete. The bid documents for the O'Galley Muck project are underway, and the other projects are in the design phase, and Indian Harbor Beach and Satellite Beach are wrapping up their permits for their projects to move forward, and Spring Creek, City of Melbourne Spring Creek was contracted this quarter.
Just want to add, on the Sykes Creek project, we broke that into phases 1 and phases 2. The dredging contractor for phase 1 just completed the dredging last week, so now they're working on site restoration. That dredge material management area was on an island. The island is full, so they're going to be wrapping up that, and then we'll be working on separate bid documents for phase 2, which is going to use the Nandavada lot that was purchased with swirl funds for the purpose of the rest of the Sykes Creek project, plus other surrounding projects in the area.
For oyster bars, there are 25 projects in the plan. We have 8 complete. This quarter, the City of Cocoa Beach finished their McNabb oyster bar project. They had a revised scope of the project, so they have a smaller footprint than anticipated. So I know on the table it says it was removing a higher number of total nitrogen, but the revised project is going to remove an estimated 42 pounds per year. The zoo has a variety of oyster bar projects under contract, and this quarter they installed over 2,000 square feet in the North Indian River Lagoon. And the photo here shows them with their volunteer setup along the O'Galley Causeway. And planted shorelines, we have 11 projects in the plan, 8 are complete. Cocoa Beach also finished their McNabb planted shoreline project. This one also had a revised scale for the project and is estimated to remove 7 pounds per year with their mangroves and Spartina grasses. We also have our clam aquaculture. Funding is available for a total of 10 farmers, and we have 4 underway right now. And for an overview, we are now up to 235,000 pounds of total nitrogen reduction per year, 14,000 pounds total phosphorus reduction per year. We have 162 contracts executed and are now up to 79 projects completed. And then I have our latest thermometers that are on our website. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. How do we get this information out to the public? I mean, I've been beating this drum for
It's
8 years.
on our website. Everything's on our website.
Well, I know that, but most people don't know the website exists, and I know a lot, but gosh, I didn't know half of this. So, you know, we have a referendum supposedly coming up in the near future for extending the soil program. If we get this information out to the public somehow, and I don't know how you do it, because the paper doesn't go to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that would be a start. And the signs, I'm glad to see that's been done, because that's important. People need to see that graphic, that this is a project that has been funded and is doing good things. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I know it's something that, it's a drum that we need to continue to beat.
Yeah. Brandon focuses a lot on our communication, and he can speak on that.
Yeah, so besides the website, we have social media. We push things out through there. We have posts on there regularly. We also have a newsletter people can sign up for, and we send monthly newsletter out as an update on different projects, highlighting different parts of the plan. And so that's one of 2 newsletters. We also have our Algae Bloom newsletter too that gets information out to the public. So, and people keep signing up for them, so the word is spreading. And we try to get out to events to talk to people, whether it's festivals or speaking to HOAs. We usually have a couple of those every month that will be out in the public talking to people about our program.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and with the thought in mind of the HOAs and groups like that, they're always looking for speakers. So if we have somebody that can do that, is available to do that.
Yeah, I was just talking to an HOA yesterday that was requesting a speaker, so.
And your groups, your Chamber of Commerces, and there's
Yeah, we've
usually,
spoke to just about every single sustainability group for the different cities. I think we've been to pretty much every one of those. And then,
you know, another thought that I just had would be if we, you, not we, if we could get maybe a shortened version of this in the hands of Rob Feltner, who is our representative on the Indian River Lagoon Council, and let him present that. Of course, we'd have to get with Dwayne, but to allow him to do that. But I think that would be informative and constructive for the other counties, because we're smoking them, guys. And maybe we can shame them into getting a little bit more active. Somebody else said that, I didn't.
To build on the HOA comment too, just one thing is, as we get out there, we're going to be limited by the number of staff there are, the people on this committee, things like that. One thing I'd encourage is that at everything that we go, let's try to walk away with a champion from that group that agrees to be that voice for those groups to continue to, that we can expand to make sure that we've got those groups of champions to carry that around their neighborhood and on their street, whatever that is. I mean, you think about when, elections come around, everybody gets canvassed, and so I think, really taking some cues from some of the other tools would be helpful. Stephanie?
I know that, I think most municipalities have a newsletter that goes out to their residents. And I know that we kind of, put some kind of educational piece requirement in all of the proposals that we've done. But if we could ask them to highlight what we've paid for in their city, that's a great vehicle too, to get the word out, to say, we're partnering with the city of West Melbourne for Ray Bullard. We're partnering with Satellite Beach for the Grand Canal. We're partnering with these municipalities and asking them to get the word out in their newsletters as well. So,
Orly?
If we could make like a flyer, front and back, that will fold up and fit inside water bill, just about everybody gets a water bill. So if we could partner with the cities and use the county and get some kind of a informational piece, condensation of that, and it was terrific. Get that out into all of the water bills.
Yeah,
Periodically.
We had looked at that in the past. That was one of the things when we did the expanded outreach opportunities, that was on the list of things. It was one of the more expensive things to do on that list, though. In fact, I think it was the most expensive thing on the list, was to get the inserts in the bills. And it depends on, like, a lot of them won't let us put things in the utility bills, but we'd have to check and see which ones would allow it.
That might be a place to have some expanded conversation, because I think that's probably a staff response, because that's the standard policy. But when we're partnering with so many of these municipalities, there may be some opportunities to think about that a little differently.
Yeah, let me just clarify. I mean, we have done that in the past. We have done outreach programs that way, and the cities, Melbourne has been very cooperative with us and helpful, and they're not charging us a fee. It's the company that stuffs their envelopes and mails their stuff, right? So we're paying for the printing of our thing and the extra stuffing charges.
But often the utilities will have their own inserts that they do, and it might be that rather than doing a standalone, that we can just get a corner of theirs with rather than a bunch of information, some references, QR code over to the website, or, rather than thinking big and gigantic as a completely standalone item, is, a portion of what they're already doing, so that it doesn't create additional cost for them that gives us an opportunity to do it at a more manageable cost. So.
At the risk of extending this conversation, because I'd like to move it along so you can leave on time and so I can leave early too. I thought, and I'm sure we've discussed this in the past, we've discovered historically that inserts in envelopes, nobody reads them, have a tendency to throw them away. And so if that's the case, I would urge, before we spend a lot of staff time going around inserting things in envelopes, that we be careful and make sure that people are actually looking at these things as opposed to tossing them out.
All right.
Also, more and more they're going electronic. I think we have a large percentage in Cocoa Water Utility that are electronic bills. But how many signs do we have up? Because the signage is really effective. And the more you see that, the more it really creates this presence of projects.
So we implemented that clause into our contracts and the new scope of work for each contract moving forward, and that started last year. So those projects are moving. I don't know the number off the top of my head. Melbourne's been very participative in the program so far. I know the zoo created a sign for, along the causeway there. They had their signs up saying they were doing work and it's got the Save Our Lagoon logo on it as well. The city of Titusville, when they did their Osprey water reclamation facility upgrades, they had our logo on their sign. So
Okay.
they're getting out there more.
Okay, but all the projects.
Yeah,
we've
and we
done
also,
previously-
next month, we're getting close to 30, is that right? Manatee and rec signs?
20-something?
Yeah, there's going to be about 30, remember the flyers that were given out at the last meeting, the pamphlets? We have signs, hard signs going up at a variety of parks throughout the county as well. So that'll have our logo on it as well.
And the little signs at the septic upgrades.
Yep, and we also have the homeowner signs for when they get a septic upgrade that says that project was funded
Okay.
by the Save Our Lagoon.
Okay, any final comments?
Do we have any education going on in the schools, making the children aware of everything we're doing? I'm sure you do, but I could just see them all growing mangroves and bringing them home,
So-
spreading the word to their parents.
Yeah, we have our Lagoon Loyal program that we have Carlos Cuevas with our stormwater department. He is coordinating a lot of the school programs, and he uses both himself, and then he's had contracted groups like MRC go out and speak on that program. So.
And that's coordinated with all the cities too, and their outreach people and their outreach programs, so it's county-wide.
Yeah, there's a certain number of programs they have to do each year as part of that.
Yeah, and I know Dr. Windsor wants to end this, and so I'll try to end it quick, Dr. Windsor. Two things, though. One thing on the advertising, what we're talking about, I'd love to see 6-second and 12-second YouTube videos. Those are the ones you can't skip. And so Nielsen just reported for the first time they're under 50% of cable users. It's now all internet streaming. And so I'd love to see that data flashy with some rock music or rap music that you bought, and just something really cool, short, 6 seconds, your money at work, boom, 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 done. So I think 6 and 12-second ads on YouTube would be awesome. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out, because I thought it was amazing, I think, Terri, you said there were 800 leaky lateral somewhere in there fixes, and 300 of them we paid for? That's like 3 times our investment because others are hearing about a project. I think that's exactly what this whole project is about. It's about a movement. It's about starting us in the right direction. So that 300 that we paid for ended up with 800 of them being done. And so that's awesome. Kudos to the staff.
So given the interest in this, I think one of the things we might want to do is just come back at a future meeting with kind of a recap of the communications, because we've got a lot of different things going on in a lot of different places, and if we can get that, or to show that inventory.
As a reminder too, you guys approved an addition to our outreach components that we can boost social media posts. But just be aware that the funding that we have for those is dedicated to those different campaigns. So the fertilizer, septic, things like that. We don't have dedicated funding for just general, this is the progress of the plan. So anything touting the progress, we would have to identify funding and put that in a later plan to have that added in.
Okay. I have one final comment on just a related matter for these project updates. We saw several that are related to wastewater plants and things of that nature. With some of the recent legislative changes, philosophically, we as a committee have said that we aren't generally in favor of paying for the things that have a regulatory mandate and that have another funding source. So with quite a few of these new legislative changes that have happened in the last year, as we move into the planning process, I think it would be very helpful for us to understand how that has, if that impacts and maybe our policy changes, because we're already midstream on things. But let's just make sure that we understand that with the changing regulatory and legislative environment, how that affects some of the project items. And so with that,
Quick question.
one final question.
Okay, I just really, on that note, are there administrative rules written for the House Bill 1379? You know, we received that sheet, but have they started to write the administrative rules that would make it really clear how this is going to be implemented?
We got one letter, 2 or 3 page letter from DEP with 14 action items on it. Should have gone to all the cities as well. But there's still a lot of clarity that is lacking.
Okay.
And yesterday, I think it was yesterday, somebody told me that the positions to oversee these new programs, right, they're not filled. There's nobody there to ask
Right.
questions. So.
I think what we're saying is that you're lucky if DEP's dealing with it in a year. In reality, 2 or 3 years is a more realistic time frame for implementation of some of these new legislative changes.
Okay, because the wastewater reports are due in January.
There has been some updates on the wastewater report forms, but again, whether there's anything happening with them, it's still evolving. Okay, ready to move on to other reports and special presentations. Sounds of the Lagoon.
Yeah, is Barry here?
Yeah, he's right.
You have your presentation, or are you going to show video?
I think that we sent it to the team. Did we, I think we sent it.
No, but we can pull it up from the video website.
Okay, I have it,
EGAD's website. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's
yeah,
it, yeah.
so you can,
Oh, yeah.
You want to say something first
Yeah.
before
Sure.
you hit go?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll introduce Kathy with EGAD and let her kind of mention a little bit of where the project came from, and then maybe I can offer a little bit on the back end.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Elias. I'm the Executive Director for the Oak Alley Arts District. And the Sounds of the Lagoon project came really from, well, it's a National Endowment for the Arts funded project, and it came from, I have a background in cultural management and curatorial work. And so I understand that the environment is one of the most determining, if not the most determining factor in cultural development. So in looking into what is relevant to our community, the lagoons seem to be the one area that everyone is interested in and they want to protect and they understand the importance of it. So I know that a lot of people, like you were saying, are not going to read the pamphlets that come into their mailboxes. They're not going to go on your website. They're not going to sit and read books. We do, because I think it's safe to say we're a group of cool nerds and we love to read. But a lot of people won't. So I understand that the arts is one of those tools that would help people understand topics more profoundly. And I think music is a very simple gateway for people to look into what is truly the most relevant aspect of their lives is protect your environment, because this is your house and you have to protect it and you need what it produces to live and survive. So I contacted Barry to create the visuals for this project, and so he can speak to the short film that we created.
Yeah, well, this is really an honor to be here. I think what you guys are doing is extremely valuable. I've done a lot of work in my years. I've worked with National Geographic, I've worked with Animal Planet, and I've done multiple documentaries on my own. And this one, I have probably had more interest and more people reach out and share their excitement and share their appreciation for this and than any of those. And I really have enjoyed seeing the excitement of the community, and I think the value to this team is that that you might not always hear that and see that in your work and in your effort, and you guys are out there kind of battling your battles, but there are a lot of people that really care about what you're doing, and what you're doing is very valuable. And so I was excited to be able to do this and capture this small piece and tell a little bit of the backstory of the composer and also capture some beautiful footage. I worked with a fellow cinematographer in the area, Jesse McMinn, and so that was very exciting. And so I'm proud to be able to share this. And I also, before I close, we're excited because we also want to and are working to create a longer form piece that really tells the story of the lagoon, past, present, and future. And we are looking to find funding for that, and Kathy is doing an amazing job of finding grants and different things. So we hope to be able to tell a longer form story that really kind of tells the full depth and scope of this amazing body of water that reaches so far and touches so many lives. So with that being said, I'll show you the taste of kind of what we built, and hopefully there's more to come in the future. Oh, is there audio? Is there an audio?
There should be.
There's a man behind it.
The Wizard of Oz, the wizard. You just speak to the air and Logan hears you? Is that how?
Yeah.
Logan.
But I think you have to hit play.
Oh, should I just push play then?
Mm-hmm.
This is on, and
While we get the audio to work, I forgot to mention the original music piece that you will hear part of was created by composer Luis Quintana. He's a Puerto Rican composer who grew up around bioluminescence, and now he resides in France. So both the musical piece that was performed by the Brevard Symphony Orchestra String Ensemble and the video you can find on the Oak Valley Arts District website, which is egatlife.com.
I heard the last one, Logan, you were just on.
That's through the computer.
Play it through the owl, I guess. Here you go.
it's certainly a very calm place. It is, I guess it's as calm as I imagined it would be.
Preparing a brand new piece of music that none of us have seen or heard before is a different process than if we were preparing for a performance later this week of a piece by Tchaikovsky or Dvorak or Beethoven. And the best part of today was that we had Luis, our composer, right here. So if we had a question, we could ask him and he could demonstrate.
But it's something like that. Could you try it faster then, maybe? There's no objective way of turning a visual image into sound. For me, it's rather subjective. There are certain sounds that for me that can be linked to certain images or certain colors. It's not quite synesthesia, but it's more of a sensation.
Well, you know, throughout history, composers going all the way back to the Baroque era were inspired by nature. And that's what Luis has done with this piece. He's given us natural sounds inspired by what he's seen and heard.
The inspiration for the piece was, first of all, sounds that are found in the Indian River Lagoon, and also certain images, particularly images, pictures of the bioluminescent effect that happens at night in the summer. I cannot even remember how old I was. I was rather young, and I still have like a vague memory of it in my mind. It was the color, what I remember, the fact that the water sort of becomes alive in a sense.
We have such a beautiful natural environment here in the community, but this is certainly the most unique event to sort of bring performance and the natural environment together. We're so excited about it.
There is music to be made from the sounds of nature. Because if we think of music as art, and if we think of art as a human endeavor, then any sound could potentially become music, for sure.
Okay. Thank you. I think based on our last conversation, there's many different ways of connecting with people, and so I love the fact that we're expanding that. Our next topic is evaluating ecosystem degradation and stakeholder livelihood in a marine protected area.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Hannah Herrero. I'm a professor at the University of Tennessee in the Department of Geography and Sustainability, as well as the Director of Science for the Lagoon Watermen Alliance. I wanted to talk with you all a bit today, and I will try to keep it to 15 minutes, about a survey that I deployed to different stakeholders in and around the lagoon this past winter/spring. So the very first part of this project that I was inspired by, to give you a little bit of background for myself, I am a remote sensing scientist, so I primarily use satellite imagery to evaluate vegetation change over time in protected areas. And a lot of my work over the course of my career has been across southern Africa, but during COVID, switched gears a bit. I'm from New Smyrna. I was stuck in New Smyrna, and so I wanted to start to investigate some things in my backyard to diversify my research portfolio. And I started talking with guides and found that there was this really huge issue right here that my satellite imagery could be very useful for. So I thought, what if we use satellite imagery at a whole lagoon footprint and consistent spatial and temporal scale? Could we map what seagrass looked like over time, rather than, supplementing the more expensive, very intensive field work that a lot of the different government agencies do? And so I just wanted to give you a sample of some of the results here that inspired the next step, which was the survey. So this is from Landsat imagery, which is 30-meter spatial resolution, looking at what seagrass meadow extent looked like in the year 2013 and what it looked like in 2020. I'm sure a lot of you spend a lot of time on the lagoon, so you know that sadly that picture there in 2020 is very accurate. So obviously we all know and have talked a lot about harmful algal blooms and climate variability and the impact that that has had on seagrass. But then I wanted to know, okay, now that we know that and we've seen and observed more than this 90% loss, how is this impacting our stakeholders? And primarily, like I said, I'm a part of the fishing community, so how is this impacting guides? So developed this, sent it through IRB at the University of Tennessee. And I'd like to walk you through straight into those results today. This was electronically distributed, and we did have 105 respondents, which was quite amazing. This is just to give you a bit of demographic information here on the left as to what type of stakeholder answered these questions. Majority of them were fishermen of some type. 31 were guides, and 53 were considered to be recreational fishermen, as well as other people who identified as conservationists, fishermen or hunters, residents, government agencies, paddle boarders, or in some other way use the lagoon. I was also interested in, okay, how long have people been using the lagoon to be able to see, could they really observe that change over time? And most people have been using the lagoon throughout the 21st century. So the first question that I wanted to know about was, what kind of a decline, if any, have you observed? And 99% of those, one said okay, said that there was a severe decline in lagoon health over time. And in this question, later I addressed seagrass, but without any prompting, 63% of respondents noted that seagrass was at least partly the issue here, and that seagrass loss was one of the things that they had noted as an indicator of lagoon health decline. As I said here, 52% mentioned decline as a word. Manatees were mentioned only 8% of the time. And then lots of different species of fish, which of course a lot of these stakeholders are targeting, were also mentioned. And then you can get at a bit of perhaps a species shift. A lot of people that I talked to mentioned instead of maybe targeting redfish as much, there were a lot more black drum that they were targeting in the lagoon instead. And baitfish in decline was also mentioned several times. Here's just a better visual depiction of that for you, a word cloud, so the bigger the word, the more times it was mentioned. So things like seagrass, decline, fish, habitat loss, population. So I wanted to demonstrate, though, a little bit more about people's attitudes and what they were observing. So I've selectively pulled some quotes that I'd like to read for you today. Decline in habitat, decline in fish numbers. Due to habitat loss, fish have been forced to move to different locations for better water quality, food source, and place for refuge. Most adult redfish have moved to new locations because their old habitats can no longer support their spawning habits. I noticed a lack of seagrass on sand flats, noted in satellite imagery, and video footage of fishing the lagoon from 2010 or earlier showed these large seagrass beds that were no longer there. Incredible loss of seagrass. The lagoon has zero seagrass. Total loss of the fisheries. Yes, water quality, obviously. I encourage you to look into sewer line leaks and the events of the city of Melbourne specifically. Seagrass is almost non-existent. Absolutely barren, no seagrass to be seen. complete seagrass die-off, and a severe decline of fish. And shortly after most seagrass died, there was a significant decline in red drum and spotted sea trout. Also a considerable decline in blue crab, pompano, and sheep's head. So just wanted to emphasize what people are seeing here and observing. And myself, going through and yes, working with satellite imagery, it's always it's very stark to see the difference, like I showed you in the very beginning, that result. But it's different when you're hearing how this is actually impacting people and their businesses, which we are going to get to. So asking for perceptions of approximately when they feel like they observed this decline, 15 of those respondents noted the anomalies of 2010 and 2011. I'm sure you all remember that. I was in high school in Port Orange, and there was like a snowflake on my hand, and I could not believe it. But most people note that that is around the time when they see this decline. And what we found in the imagery is that the last large extent of seagrass was that 2013 that I showed you. Then there's severe decline after that. So in wondering, okay, what do you all think that is causing this issue with the ecosystem? So there's a theme here. You can see on the left, yes, manatees are mentioned, but other than that, it's all pretty much linked to water quality, with runoff, septic tanks, fertilizer, pollution, algal blooms, specifically water quality, and chemicals. So people are understanding that these are the reasons that are linked to that ecosystem. And again, this is just to show you in a different visual tool, water, pollution, runoff, septic, sewage, manatees, blooms, nutrients, algae. Okay, so then I was really interested in how this was affecting people economically. 74% of guides saw that there was a drop in their income or business since this decline of the ecosystem. Several people specifically mentioned having to warn their clients about bad conditions, or maybe you weren't going to catch a lot of fish that day, or maybe let's go find a different area to fish, or having to work much harder to achieve the same economic outcome. And there were at least one, but I think two in here from interpretation, that lost their businesses completely since this decline. 5 of those respondents had only started their businesses after this decline, so they were not able to comment on the before to after impact. Then I wanted to know, okay, what are some of the adaptations that they were trying to use to overcome these challenges? 58% said they now have to travel much further, either by boat or by truck or both, in order to find fish. 36% that said that they travel approximately the same, and 2 respondents, 5%, said that they travel less each year, likely due to that change in spatial distribution. Maybe those were just the 2 where the fish moved a little bit closer to them, and that worked out in their favor, although still a lot less fish overall. One other thing that was repeatedly mentioned in here was having to adapt by moving seasonally. So a lot more guides working in the Florida Keys and Louisiana primarily, which obviously takes the economic input out of our system and into these other places, but then also has a really negative impact on family and social structure as well, with, I think, all of the respondents except for 1 were male, and so the vast majority, I think maybe all 76 of the licensed guides are males on the Lagoon. So they were having to leave their families behind for several months at a time, which was causing social issues as well. What other sort of adaptations could be things like different boats, different bait, different locations or target species, etc. 96% of respondents noted that they had to make some sort of significant change that was oftentimes expensive. Some of those strategies included leaving the lagoon altogether. Some were seasonal, like I just mentioned. Different target species, as I said, a lot of people, obviously it's culturally considered a less desirable fish, black drum, but a lot of people were moving towards that. And then several people mentioned having to buy newer, bigger boats so that they could move from the flats into more of the river or near shore areas. And then some people were having to change career. Like I mentioned, several of them went out of business completely, and several of them had to get other side jobs to make ends meet for their family, in addition to then guiding part-time. Those lucky 2 respondents have not had to make any adjustments. So again, just to highlight a little bit more of their attitudes, left commercial blue crabbing due to insufficient number of crabs. Only fishing recreationally for small tarpon. Trout and redfish are gone due to seagrass die-off. I still spend a lot of time in the lagoon, probably more than most other guides. Lots of guides have bought bay boats and offer different experiences now. I travel to the Keys now and currently have a second boat in order to do that better. Doubled my business costs since the decline because I've had to purchase an additional boat. New boat, $60,000 plus more travel time, over $100,000. Harder to find fish, so working harder and longer for the same prices. And I went out of business last October. So then I had spoken with a lot of people when you talk about like the old days in the lagoon. I don't know how long you've been around here for, but repeatedly I heard stories about, well, of course, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, all that. But even that in the 90s and early 2000s, fishing was very different in terms of how much people were catching. So this is just the number, like the actual number respondent on the bottom, and a before and after of how much their average day of fishing would catch them. So it was not unheard of. You can see so many people here said that at least 25 fish, some people up to 100 fish a day would be considered a normal day of fishing for them. Now you can see in the black line to the right of those blue lines that people are really happy if they're catching 1 or 2 fish a day, with almost no one mentioning more than 10 fish a day. So a very severe decline in what people are able to accomplish in this one metric since this decline. Okay, then I asked people about seagrass when they feel like they observe this loss, and the majority of people, again, note this area around 2010, 2011, and since then. For sure, pretty much all respondents since 2015. But it was interesting because you see a lot of different numbers depending on how you're measuring seagrass loss and which government agency you're looking at and what area of the lagoon you're looking at. But I was interested in what were they observing or perceiving in the Mosquito Lagoon. And not that surprisingly, it differs from a lot of the numbers, official numbers that I have seen thrown around, and really coincides with the maps that we have made. So the vast majority of respondents observed at least a 60% loss, but the majority of people said a 90+% loss of seagrass. So, I mean, it was barren out there. It was completely barren. It was extremely difficult for me to even find any samples of seagrass in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Okay, so I wanted to know, what do people think are practices that could help restore? 81% referred to needing better policy and management around nutrient dumping into the IRL. 16% did mention manatees, namely restoring their migration, but I'm sure as you all know, they are cultural migrators, so if their parents have not migrated, they won't know how to migrate, so that's a whole other biology issue. And then 12% mentioned catch and release of all species. So just again, some quotes. Cities need to be held responsible with increasing fine amounts for each accidental discharge into the river. New growth should require zero impact on the IRL through low impact development. Muck removal needs to be prioritized in area where that's still an issue. Herbicide spraying needs to be eliminated. HOA should be banned from requiring yard treatment for the neighborhoods within a mile of the river or in areas where drainage ditches run to the river. And placement of underground pipes in strategic locations in the South Mosquito Lagoon, North Indian River, and Banana River to allow seawater to enter and help flush the system. Interesting with Hurricane Nicole and all the washovers that we experienced in the Mosquito Lagoon. All fish within the refuge should be catch and release only. We need to reduce the amount of untreated runoff that's allowed to flow in, and finish all city and town sewer projects to eliminate waste unlawfully or lawfully entering into the system. And then I asked, do you know of any current policies that might be influencing that health? Everything was related, those answers, to government regulation or lack thereof on chemicals entering the lagoon, if it was fertilizer, sewage, wastewater, either treated or untreated. And maybe there was regulation, but it wasn't enforced, was something that they had mentioned several times as well. Manatees were in there, and then development and increasing population in and around the IRL was also mentioned a lot. So then I wanted to see what was their attitude about future recovery. And we have most people that said yes, maybe, or conditionally, depending on how policy and enforcement and restoration are conducted. And then a couple, 6, that said no. Catch and release only policies. 95% of those respondents fully supported catch and release. 17% specifically mentioned it, expanding into different species that they were enthusiastically in favor for. I'm sure, as you all know, we worked really hard last year, a lot of different stakeholder groups, to ensure that redfish were going to be catch and release only in Mosquito Lagoon. Disappointingly, they moved that boundary of what Mosquito Lagoon was from High Bridge to 44, but at least redfish in the lagoon are catch and release. And so moving that to different species, like right now they're looking at snook, and then next will be sea trout, people are in favor for, because they understand that, okay, yes, maybe your client wants to keep a fish today, but if you want to fish tomorrow, your client can't keep that fish. So people are understanding that. 2 people brought up the idea of applying for tags in order to raise money for conservation as well. So most people considered catch and release on their business to still be a positive, again, for the longevity of their business. So there was this overwhelming acknowledgement of ecosystem decline, and seagrass was very well understood to be the foundation of these issues, mostly linked to water quality, namely nutrient loading and wastewater management. People's businesses are suffering. I'm sure, as you all have heard, there is seagrass that has come back in Mosquito Lagoon this year, potentially linked to lower salinity because of Hurricane Ian. But right now is the time for all of us to be very vigilant, which is why we have formed the Lagoon Waterman Alliance. I went back and presented the results of this survey, which I know a couple of you attended, to the different stakeholders, and we're now trying to move forward with education and influencing policy through that stakeholder workshop, and also applying for some of this funding. That is the call that was mentioned for FDEP this week. Okay, any questions or comments? And that's my email address. Happy to chat with anyone more. Sorry, I went a little bit over. Laura Lee, how are you?
Well, I have a question. First of all, I think you meant to say that the area where the seagrass recovered the most had higher salinity because of the hurricanes. Because of the washover.
So the washover occurred in Nicole, but Ian first dumped so much fresh water that it did lower the salinity level, which macroalgae were not able to withstand.
Okay.
So the influence of that is thought, again, there's been no studies because all of this just happened, but talking with state biologists, that seems to be the thought. I am not a biologist, I'm a geographer. Yes.
Okay, and then also at the end of your presentation at the Waterman's, or maybe it was the other lady's presentation, but you showed the artificial intelligence prediction of where the seagrass was coming back. Do you happen to have that to show everybody? And
I don't in this presentation.
Okay, and then lastly, the St. Johns River Water Management District, was about to do their aerial surveys. Have they done that, and have you been able to compare your artificial intelligence predictions against what they found on the ground?
They have done that, and at the STEM committee last week, I did see the map that they've produced since then. I'm still trying to get them to share that data with me. I would love to use it as a validation in what we are doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
How many people were asked? And you said 105 responded, right?
Yes.
What was the, and Was it just the Mosquito Lagoon, and where was those parameters for who you asked as well?
Yeah, so the study describes the Mosquito Lagoon and where that is, but it could have been sent out to anyone who has fished on the Mosquito Lagoon at some point in time. So yes, the study was specific to the Mosquito Lagoon. But I'm sure there's people that.
Who did you survey? Where did it go out to?
Yeah.
Just the registered?
So it went to all
guides,
of
or-
them, and then it was also passed out electronically, so to anyone else who, that's why a lot of guides, or a lot of people in there were, considered themselves to be recreational fishermen. So once it was distributed electronically, anyone is able to take the survey. And so it did go to all of the guides that are registered, but then it was more broadly distributed just to have a better understanding.
Started directionally, but still open. Because
Yes.
some of the responses were kind of, I was like, seemed like there was some little, I don't want to say back and forth, but it was like, okay.
Yeah, but 31 of the people did identify as being licensed guides in the Mosquito Lagoon,
Okay,
out of those 75 that are licensed.
thank you.
A question for Clerk.
I wanted to commend you because I thought this was fascinating. If you do one again, I would love for you to include people that live on the lagoon. I've lived there for over 30 years, and I see it every day. And I can tell you that the improvements have been noticeable, not scientific. I can just see the difference. I've got clerpa growing, tons of it, along myself and my neighbors. But I'm also starting to see seagrasses pop up in that clerpa and in the sandy areas, which is an extremely positive note. And I think from the perspective that I have from Virginia, the areas where I am are greatly affected by a project that was completed, Virginia, about a year and a half ago, Otter Creek, filtering from Wickham Road down into, it's just been a phenomenal change. I mean, it was like night and day from a year and a half ago. So I would love to see the residents included in that, because we have a perspective also, because we see it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a few people that were residents. So it could have been, like I said, it was electronically distributed to anyone. It would be interesting to figure out how to best get it to those residents. Like, because I imagine there's not a listserv or anything like that, which is what I used for this. So it would be interesting how to distribute it without physically going door to door.
Okay.
But different groups like this, and everyone would like to
Thank
work with me and help distribute stuff, that would be great.
Well, it's I resisted in the last conversation because we keep going about, but one of my thoughts in that was maybe getting the list of registered boat owners and sending something specifically to them, because they're going to have a top concern, and they're going to talk to their people, so to speak, more. So that might be an interesting comparison, boat owners versus just property owners. Like,
Sure.
one is going out in it, and one just might look at it.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next is CCA, Florida Restocking and Habitat Restoration.
And this one's via Zoom.
Frank, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Welcome.
You can, do you want to share your screen?
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm getting a terrible,
Oh, yep, I'm going to mute this and
Yeah,
then
if
it
everyone
should
could
fix
mute their
it.
microphones in the room, please.
Okay, can y'all see that?
Yes. You're in, you need to go into, yep, there you do.
Okay, excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm the Director of Habitat and Environmental Restoration for CCA Florida. I just give you a quick background on myself and our organization before I go into talking about fishery stocking and habitat restoration. I am a Florida native. My first trip to the Indian River Lagoon was in 1973, and I've been going back ever since. That one trip as a young kid basically changed my entire life. And so the Indian River Lagoon is a really special place to me. I'm with Coastal Conservation Association, and our organization actually started in Texas in 1977, and that was due to the drastic decline in sea trout and redfish. And then over the years, we've added on 19 coastal states, including Florida. Florida came around in 1988. Or 1985, I'm sorry, and that was just prior to our involvement in the Ban the Net in the early 90s. But as an organization in Florida, we have over 18,000 members, and we have 42 individual chapters throughout the state because we're a grassroots organization. So having these individual chapters kind of like our boots on the ground where we find out about projects and issues and things like that. Let's see here. And just some of the things we do. This is both statewide and nationwide. And I'm not going to read them all, but the CCA was basically founded to help with the healthy fish stock, access for fishermen, stuff like that. And as the years progressed, especially with CCA Florida, back in about, roughly 10 years ago, we really made a turn towards getting heavily involved in habitat restoration because, we understood that without the water quality, without the water quality and, clean water, we're not going to have the fish. And so, we were watching the seagrass decline and the oysters and the clams and everything else like everyone else. So that's when we really decided to get involved. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. I wanted to talk to y'all about fishery stocking first. And we really got involved in this about 5 years ago as a response to the red tide on the West Coast. And we partnered with the Duke Energy Mariculture Center in Crystal River and also with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And since 2018, we've released 149,000 redfish on the West Coast, along with 110,000 spotted sea trout and about 5,000 snook. And like I said, this was in response to the red tide. And the reason we waited, it's probably been 4 years since then, we waited to release fish on the East Coast is because FWC recognized the East and West Coast redfish as being genetically different. And so the brood stock that we captured on the West Coast, and this was all done by a permit, of course, through FWC, those fish had to be released on the West Coast. And at the time, back in 2018, the redfish weren't such a big problem on the East Coast. And so that's where our focus was. But starting last year, here's just a few photos of some of the releases on the West Coast. I just wanted to share these with you so you can kind of get an idea of the size and everything. It's really important to us to involve the children in these. While a lot of these fish are sent directly from the transport tanks through pipes out into the water, we also have bags that individuals can carry down to the water and release themselves. And it's just really important to have that hands-on, initiative where these kids are able to release the fish because they'll always remember it. That upper left photo was First Lady DeSantis with her children, and they came out to a couple of the releases as well. And then starting last year, you might recognize some of these people. Starting last year, we did our first redfish release in Brevard County. It's called Release the East. And we released 15,000 redfish in Cocoa Beach. And I want to mention that the redfish that we're releasing, we do it differently than anybody else around the state, or really the country for that matter. Most fish, when they're released, are really small, minnow size, a half inch or so. Duke Energy Mariculture Center has a series of large 1-acre ponds available where they pump salt water straight in from the Gulf of Mexico. And so we're able to release these smaller fish into the ponds and let them grow up into larger size, usually between about 4 to 6 inches, somewhere in there, and sometimes larger. And that's when we release them. They have a much higher survivability rate when we release them at that size. And with the redfish, we'll release them all the way up to 30 inches. So as the fish get bigger, we can move them from pond to pond and keep the same sizes together. And it really increases the survivability of the fish. And here's some of the numbers. Well, these are the numbers so far for the west coast or the east coast of Florida. Starting last year in Brevard County, we released 86,000 of these fish so far, 4 to 9 inches. And fortunately, and coincidentally, the redfish harvesting was closed last year on September 1st. And so none of these fish could be harvested if they were caught anyway, which is nice. But and then we do have plans moving forward to release more of these on the East Coast. In addition to this fall, CCA is starting an Adopt a Redfish program on the East Coast of Florida, and we're going to be releasing 100 redfish between 15 and 25 inches. And these fish will have tags, item anchor tags that can be tracked. Basically, everybody's going to be able to track their own fish. And so we're really excited about that to see how these fish are doing, where they're moving, and all that. And we've done projects like this also in the past. But so the restocking is a really big part of our organization and part of our partnership with Duke and FWC. And this is what I do mainly, is the habitat restoration. I do this all over the state of Florida. I wanted to share with you a couple of quick maps so you kind of understand how we've changed over the years, because a lot of people aren't aware of this. But this is a map of all of our projects in 2015. And actually, it shows 11. There's actually only one here that got initiated, that got completed. And then jump forward to the map that I just updated, and this is 2023, and these are the projects we've done all around the state. So we've significantly put our time and resources towards working on everything from, living shorelines to artificial reefs to oyster restoration, clam restoration, seagrass. I mean, you name it, we're involved. And this is just a quick map of what we have coming up. We've got about 31 projects coming up this year and into next year. And as I mentioned before, we have our hands in everything as we should, and we're partnering with as many people as we can to leverage our funds. A lot of the work we do are with universities and cities and counties, and I don't know if you can see in the top right photo, we actually did a 3-year spotted sea trout acoustic study with Dr. Grant Gilmore, and that provided a lot of really interesting information on the spotted sea trout and their spawning habitat. I'm not going to read all these, just some quick numbers of our statewide accomplishments in habitat restoration. The one thing I do want to point out on here is the number of plans deployed, which is 25 million and growing. CCA has a partnership with University of Florida and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and Blair Wiggins Outdoors. And what's unique about this and how this all started, which it actually started in 2017, is it's a partnership project of agencies, institutions, private business, and nonprofits, where we've all come together to not only pull our talents and our resources, but also pull our funds. And so it's been really successful. These clams are spawning in a lot of places. And like I said, we're getting ready to really ramp this up in the future. We have a big fundraiser coming up in October in Cocoa Beach to help with our new initiative, which will be announced at that time. So we're doing a lot as well in the Indian River Lagoon, is why I wanted to bring that up. We've been involved in dozens of projects in the Indian River Lagoon. CCA's done a lot of these on our own, but most of them with partners. And I just can't stress enough how important it is to pool the resources, and you guys probably know that better than anybody. I'm not going to read all these, but we've done a lot of projects recently and in the past, anything from seagrass to oysters, clams, living shorelines. We also have, I wanted to mention, CCA has also had our own oyster recycling program since 2018. And this started with an agreement with Lake County, right in the center of Florida. They gave us an agreement to store our oyster shells out of the landfill in Astatula. And that was initiated by Commissioner Sean Parks with Lake County. And since then, it's just grown enormously. We've recycled over 100 tons of oysters. We've put back about 75 tons back into the water. We have dump trailers, and we'll fill those up and take them anywhere around the state where they're needed, and we do not charge for them. So we're really excited about this program, and we are currently growing it. We're getting ready to expand the facility and move to our larger paved area in the landfill. And just lastly, I've been mentioning partners the whole time. We have our what's called our Building Conservation Trust, which is our national habitat program for CCA. And between us and CCA Florida and our partners, we put over $9 million into habitat restoration in Florida in just the last 10 years. And I just want to leave you with a slide on our partnerships. This is just some of the people we partner with. And like I said, it just means a lot to us to be able to do this. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Frank. That was awesome.
Hold on a second. You got it on you on the computer.
Can you hear me, Frank?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, good. Okay, that was amazing. You guys are doing tremendous work. There's a lot of really healthy impoundments inside the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. Have you looked at doing some redfish releases inside those impoundments? Would you expect that their survivability might be better if they were inside the impounds rather than releasing them into the open waters of the lagoon? Thank you.
I guess the short answer is no. If it's in Mosquito Lagoon, we're release redfish into Mosquito Lagoon because Mosquito Lagoon has their own breed of redfish, which so we're not collecting brood stock from there and releasing there. We have not released any of the impoundments. What we're trying to do is, and I'm not the fish restocking person, I'm the habitat guy, let me just say that. But what I do know is we spend a lot of time before these releases looking at the water quality and making sure we're releasing them in the areas with the best water quality. And so I'm not sure if we've looked into the impoundments or not, or what the water quality is like there. But that's definitely something that we can talk about for sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Charlie?
Frank, great presentation. So I believe that your organization has a newsletter or a magazine that comes out regularly. And earlier we were talking about communicating some of our successes or all of our successes. And it seems like that'd be, we know there's more communication that we need to get out than we can do ourselves. But an organization like yours seems like a natural partner that could highlight some of the projects and their benefit to the water quality and subsequently the fisheries.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If you guys will get with me offline, I'll be glad to work with y'all, and we can do stuff in the magazine. We can do it once, or we can do it regularly. We can do updates. Be happy to do that.
Excellent. Thank you. Any others? Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. Thanks for the information and update and all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to videos, the Grand Canal geotube dewatering.
All right, so we have a couple videos on Grand Canal, and we broke it up into two different components. So we're going to start off with the dewatering. As some of you may know, it was a unique situation in Grand Canal because we didn't have a large area to deal with like we normally do to dewater the muck, so they had to engineer a new technology to be used in there, and we'll show that video.
We're here today at the Grand Canal site for muck removal off of Pineda Causeway and Satellite Beach. Muck is this really fine grain, organic rich sediment that settles on the bottom of the lagoon. So excess irrigation and rain carry sand, mud, and plant material like grass clippings and leaves into storm drains, rivers, and canals.
Muck is bad for the lagoon because it's high in nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, which make it near impossible for natural seagrass to grow on the lagoon floor. At this site, we are starting with a hydraulic dredge. The hydraulic dredge practically works as a vacuum cleaner, neatly and accurately removing the muck off the lagoon floor. From there, the muck is pumped up to our upland site here, the Dredge Material Management Area, DMMA. The first stop up here is our sand separation basin. In that basin, the larger sand sediment will settle out of the muck. From there, our muck is sent to the geotubes. Geotubes are large permeable bags that contain the muck inside but allow the water to flow out into our controlled swales. From there, it's sent to our back end to get hit with treatment prior to discharging back into the lagoon. So these geotubes are being hit with a plate compactor. This essentially shakes the bag and gives it enough pressure for the water to escape and the muck to stay inside.
So this Grand Canal site in particular is unique using the geotubes because the contractors had to get creative with such a small space to work in for the DMMA. So traditionally, the muck would have to settle out very slowly and in a large basin, but instead here it's pumped into the geotubes to dry.
Once the bags are dried and deemed safe, we haul them off to a permitted disposal area. An example of a permitted disposal area would be like agricultural land, where they till the muck into the soil and it's used as a natural fertilizer for plants to grow.
One of the reasons we put muck removal in the Save Our Indian River Lagoon plan was that it's a legacy load that leaches nitrogen and phosphorus that feeds the algae blooms. So by removing the muck, we are decreasing the food available for algae blooms, we're increasing the oxygen levels, we're providing healthy bottoms for seagrass and other organisms to recolonize.
So at the end of this Grand Canal project, we will be removing 2.7 million pounds of nitrogen and over 590,000 pounds of phosphorus. This is equivalent to the weight of over 136 school buses.
While we are removing muck, we also need people to help us slow down the production of new muck. So many of our other projects, like our stormwater projects, can tie into this, but homeowners can also help out by controlling some of the components that make up muck. Things like keeping their grass clippings out of the streets and canals, or reducing the amount of fertilizer they're using, picking up their pet waste. All of these components can feed that muck and create new muck. So we need to work together to slow down the process of making new muck. Residents can find tips like these and other ways they can help the lagoon by visiting lagoonloyal.com for easy ways they can decrease their own pollution footprint on the Indian River Lagoon.
And the next video is going to be on the interstitial water treatment. And as a reminder, The interstitial water treatment is an additional thing we are doing with the muck that was not required by our permits, so we wanted to have additional nutrient removal, so we added that component into our muck projects.
The site we're on right now is Grand Canal. It's right off of Pineda Causeway, right next to the Space Force base. Interstitial water is the effluent water or the return water after the muck and the sand has been removed from it. The process that's used to remove the nitrogen and phosphorus for the site here, it also cleans up additional things that are out there, such as arsenic and stuff. We bond that as well to our solids. So we're removing additional things that are not in the standard permit in order to ensure that the water that we discharge is as clean as possible.
So for most types of dredging, these solids, once they're separated, the water will flow back into the water body. But the water that is squeezed out of the muck, the interstitial water, has high concentrations of nitrogen and phosphorus. So there are various different types of technologies that can be used to remove dissolved pollutants, and because this is a dredging project where we want to help clean up the lagoon, we wanted to capture these dissolved pollutants too. Therefore, the county decided to go above and beyond and challenge the dredging industry to come up with a process to provide additional treatment to the water before it is returned to the lagoon. This is achieved by using the concept of pay for performance. The way pay for performance works is that the effluent or the discharge is tested and sampled daily, and the contractors get paid for interstitial water treatment on the days where they can meet these performance standards. On the days where they don't meet these standards, they are only paid for dredging and not paid for interstitial treatment. If they fail for too many days, the county can shut down dredging. This was something that nobody has ever done before. It was a learning curve that took trials and time, but now the contractors are meeting the targets and continuing to improve the process.
On this site, we are treating around 1.5 to 2 million gallons a day. Last year, we treated 207 million gallons. This year, we're on track to treat over 100 million gallons by the end of the season.
With combined environmental dredging and treatment of interstitial water, this Grand Canal project will remove over 2.7 million pounds of nitrogen and over 590,000 pounds of phosphorus. This is equivalent to the weight of over 136 school buses.
Treating interstitial water is a relatively new technology that we're utilizing, and we're constantly looking for different ways we can bring technology in to help the Indian River Lagoon. However, the average resident doesn't have to depend on fancy technology. There's simple things that they can do to help the lagoon too. They can just visit lagoonloyal.com for easy tips and tricks to reduce their own pollution footprint on the lagoon.
Awesome, thank you.
Questions on that one?
Lorley.
Yeah, it's incredible what you guys are doing. What are you doing with the sand after you've separated the muck and you've got clean, hopefully clean white sand? What are you doing with that? Are you putting it back in the lagoon? Could we enhance our disappearing spoil islands with it? What are we doing with the sand?
Most of the sand ends up getting blended back in with the muck to help the drying process for trucking it for beneficial use.
Okay. Oh, Kurt?
Are these videos available, like in a link form, that we could send them out to different folks?
Yeah, they'll be posted on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page, so both.
Super. Yeah, they're great. Great information.
Vinny?
So first off, I wanted to point out our Star is Born, Abby over here. Great, Abby, great job. It's all good, it was awesome. And the second thing, I love the switch from here's what we're doing and here's what you can do. Because I think that dual message is so inspiring and speaks to what we all hear is people saying, there's not being done, and what can we do? And so both those messages we're hearing, and these videos answer that. So kudos to you guys getting that double knockout punch in those videos.
Very impressive.
Then we have one more video. So we've been trying to get the My Lagoon stories for our new members, and we have one that has finished editing. We have a couple others that are in the works, and but we have Barbara's today.
Oh, I have so many memories of the lagoon. I remember one time I was in my boat and it was sunset, and I had my daughter and her husband and family with me, so my grandchildren there. And dolphins started swimming all around our boat. And I don't know if you've ever made eye contact with a dolphin, but it's really an incredible experience. It was really special, and if you've ever related to a creature like that, you feel like forever you're passionate about that creature. I wanted to serve on the Lagoon Oversight Committee because I'm so embedded in this community, and then with the impact that the county has with the influx of the funding, I'm very impressed with all the things that are being done. I think I can create an awareness of the things that we need to do as individuals to help our lagoon, with like just not putting our grass clippings in the water and keeping everything clean. I started with our community, and I contacted the zoo, and I had them put down on the riverfront the bags of oysters to really start cleaning up our rivers. And I think our whole community helped to create the bags of oysters. So that was my first kind of go round to make people aware of what we're doing. And it's all educating the public and individuals and children about what we need to do on a daily basis to make this a very successful cleansing of our river.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. And through the magic of TV, I'm now Todd. So I know, it's what happens. Magic of TV. All right. So no old business or new business. So we will move on to general public comments. And I've got a card from Mrs. Sullivan.
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. So I sent most of you that had your email addresses, I sent out an email this morning. And I'm just going to revisit what I came here about last time, that the Satellite Beach dredging project came before you all as a $8.2, nearly $8.3 million project that was approved by you. This went to the BOCC, was approved a part of the plan. And 5 days later, after the county approved the lagoon plan, a form was sent out to our state reps for funding, portraying it in an attestation document that this was an $18 million project for 50-50 funding. I came here at the last meeting, I requested this come before this board at the actual cost, because when this project was proposed with a $2.8 million shortfall, and they were going to apply according to the lagoon plan to the St. Johns River Water Management District, that's not what happened. And so when you are presented with a project at a certain dollars per pound of nitrogen, and that turns out to be not that number, then it should come back to you as under what is in the ordinance for the lagoon plan and giving you an actual number. So I'm making a formal request that this come before you. This is attestation by Frank Abate, who lives on the canal in Satellite Beach. I also want to say, as a comment on the videos, that doesn't tell the full story. The concern has always been in that area, the contamination, the copper, which is a biocide that is over the commercial, the cleanup target, the arsenic, which is above the commercial cleanup target, is going out to the agricultural lands and being blended. I was told it was being sold as fertilizer. This is a Class A carcinogen. It uptakes in plants. And then the third contaminant is PFAS. This has been an experimental process over 7 years to figure out how this works. This was an experimental technology that wasn't disclosed to you. And as a consequence, in the lagoon plan this year, you should pay particular attention to the concern in the plan that said that we are concerned about that the contractors determine where this muck goes. I was told the other day that the existing location where the muck was going, that they didn't want it because it's contaminated now, they know. And now a new site, that's why the delay from March until July on that project. And so the question is, PFAS is a very mobile chemical. That we're near the base through Patrick, which is the third highest contaminated base in the country, that contaminant, as an emerging contaminant. Are we polluting our water supply? We will know like within days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to point out the fact that Grand Canal project was actually in the original project plan, which the voters passed in 2016. And I do believe that 8.2 million is the 50% match. Is that correct, Virginia?
It's a new project for Saddle
Thank you,
Beach.
Mrs. Sullivan. Thank you. Thank you.
Grand Canal and South Patrick Shores.
The $9 million that we applied for from the state is for the unincorporated Grand Canal project, which I responded multiple times.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
I do have a question, and the video did mention just brief over the arsenic being separated. Is there someone that can tell us where is that arsenic going? How is that processed? Is it still in those biosolids that are being sold and or distributed? And can you tell me, is the delay on the project due to the refusal of accepting the muck after it was processed?
Thank you.
We test for the arsenic. When it exceeds what can be applied to land, it goes to an appropriate landfill.
And in regard to the other question about not meeting specs on the post-treatment of the water, there was a clause in there that said that the project can be rescinded if that contractor doesn't meet those specs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So they're testing daily for those contaminants, and they have data that they process and give back to county to make sure they're meeting the specs, correct?
Correct.
That's great, thank you.
And they don't get paid. I think that's great. That at the end of the day, even after all the work's done, if they don't meet those numbers, they don't get paid. I mean, good for us. Sorry for the contractor, but.
I
all right.
agree. I think that's a very substantial clause, and I think that does address a lot of the public's concerns, my own concerns, about where those contaminants do end up. So to see that video and see that that processing and those specs are required upon payment, I think that right there shows a lot of merit on the fact that this is being checked constantly. So that's good to know. Thank you for the video, by the way.
I have a question.
Yes, Barbara.
Who does the testing of the water? Is it the contractor or is it the county?
I don't know. Jean, you want to?
The contractors will test it daily, but we also go out and do site inspections.
No, you need to come to a mic. So it's different things are tested different ways, so that's why I'm asking for.
You can be me since I'm being taught.
Yes. The contractors will test daily because they're the ones out there, but we as the county go out every week and inspect the site, make sure they're in compliance, and then we also have our engineers that are hired that come out with us in the site inspections and also.
So do you have that checks and balance where you also test some water samples too to make sure that they're testing the right water? And I mean, if
Abby, there's also the third-party geosyntech.
Yes, so we have the
Yeah.
third-party geosyntax, so they go out and test, and they send it to a certified lab, and we get those results. We all
I was
discuss
just
those
thinking if a
results.
contractor isn't getting paid, if the water doesn't come out the right way, it just
Yes,
makes
that's
sense
why we
that
have
we should
that.
have a checks and balance there.
Exactly,
Just
so
a
that's why we
comment.
have that third party going out, and then we receive those lab results from the lab, so we can check those ourselves too.
All right, thank you.
And does that include the arsenic levels? And I may have misunderstood the video. I actually didn't ask a question then because I wanted to rewatch it. But is there a separate disposal if there is an arsenic compound that's contained, gathered? Is that a separate sediment? It may be too much to respond to right now in a brief answer. Like I said, I was going to research it a bit more before I asked, but since the conversations ensued, Do you have any information on arsenic specifically?
If it does come back above levels, it is disposed at a landfill.
If the muck comes back with a high arsenic level, that's when it's disposed at the separate site that Virginia mentioned?
Correct.
Okay, great, thanks.
And you asked about contained. So it's contained in a geotube. So we know everything in this geotube exceeds the arsenic. So everything in that geotube goes to the landfill.
Yes, and I'd love some more education about geotubes, maybe not here for this platform. I might just be making a note to myself, but yeah, that's very excellent, thanks.
It looked like a big slip and slide to me. I just wanted to run in. I'm just saying,
Well,
like, I want a geotube outside my house.
I'm sure they would welcome you to come use that compactor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw in the back of the second video, they're also out there with
I saw a guy
PVC
with a
pipes
pole hitting it,
whacking.
Yeah.
When you pass that and you see that happening, it is a little distracting if you're not quite sure what's going on, especially if you weren't familiar with what the site itself is. But I'm sure you've been out and a little.
I did, and I got lots of questions. What's that going on Pineda when they were originally developing the DMMA? So, yeah. Yeah, great questions, everybody. All right, thank you. All right, our last speaker card is from Lou.
Great. Hi. Thanks an awful lot. I wanted to start out by saying you asked a really great question because I think informing the community about the progress, whether it's these videos or, the discussions that go on in this meeting, that's a critical thing. And I think the staff, in a sense, under-described what's going on because the coalition has been working for years with Terri and with others to go ahead and put up another project complete. And now, because we've got almost 80 projects complete, and we're seeing, tens of projects, maybe I overstate, on a quarterly basis, we're putting up those cutout videos from this meeting, her presentations, out as snippet, posts so that the community sees by category of project the projects that are moving forward. And then when we do that, we go ahead and share those videos or those cut-up videos with a lot of other organizations so that we're trying to cascade out that information. And we've made very diligent efforts, and they have as well, to go ahead and build a process. In fact, there'll be a video that'll go up today, just a little snippet video, sort of like what you're talking about, except not a commercial, about the glyphosate description or discussion at the last meeting. So great question. We need to get the information out there in the community. I really wanted to come here today to make people aware that there are some important things going on that I work both with the Indian River Roundtable and the Coalition. And one of the things that the Roundtable has focused on, and maybe some of you know about this if you could pass these around, is that, there's this huge growth going on at the Kennedy Center and the Space Center. And there is historic problem there that bears on the lagoon. And there is new development going on there that is being not fully managed, at least from my point of view. The document that I put around is a document that the Roundtable prepared that discusses that. And I think that we need more engagement with that whole Kennedy growth area. The other thing is that I'm going to pass around, I want to remind people, please pass this around, that the coalition is building its army of advocates to support exactly what you're doing. The Lagoon Voices, I want people to know about it. There are documents over there that people can pick up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, after that, now we're down to final comments by chair and committee members, and I think Virginia has something.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know about a few staff changes. So, we lost Crystal Melton a while back. We hired a replacement, Tiffany Eckert. She was at your meeting here last month, but we let Molly do the presentation anyway while Tiffany was getting her feet wet. But But she, at the same time that she applied for the job with us, she applied for some other jobs, and one of those came through a month after she had been with us. And so she is no longer with us, and we are underway in interviews with that search again. Also, Dominic Dudai, who you know from all of his excellent work on the leaky lateral repair grant program and the in-ground nitrogen-reducing bioreactors and other duties as assigned. He is leaving us at the end of the month to go to Lockheed Martin, so we wish him the best of luck. And Matt Battalato is also leaving us. Matt was gonna leave us sooner, and now that Dominic is leaving too, we begged Matt to stay a little bit longer, which he's agreed to do. So you'll see him for another month or two, but just wanted you to know we're gonna have some major setbacks with these losses, and we'll do our best to find great replacements. But these folks have really helped shape our program, and it's going to take us a little while to ramp back up. So.
All right, thank you. I think, Kurt, yes.
Lou Kontnick. Sorry. Lou Kontnick, you had your last statement. I don't know if you're aware that the Linda Weatherman and the EDC and the county are working on a regional wastewater treatment center, and that should address most of what you were talking about.
All right. Yes, Lorraine.
Do we know, that's on our list of presentations. Do we know when that's coming up, when that's going to be prime time?
No, we don't have that scheduled. So
Okay.
the draft feasibility study has been delivered. I'm not sure that it's been finalized yet.
Okay.
And I know they're already seeking funds for the next step in engineering funding.
Okay.
Okay. Well, on those vacancies, which thank you all for giving your time, talent, and treasure to the county. If you could, Virginia, if you wanted to, once you get a blurb or something together for those vacancies, if you could email it out to me and others of the committee, if we could put that out, either to people we know or on our social media outlets. Because I know losing that many number of people of a staff at once is a big hit, because then you've got to do interviews to fill those spots, meanwhile trying to do additional work. I mean, just Matt alone does the job of 5 employees, so that take long lunches, but 5 employees regardless. I got to roast you now. You're not going to be here much longer. But anyways, if you could send that around, I know I'll send it out to people that I know, because those positions, you guys are the ones that touch the residents in our county. And I know, Matt, from seeing your posts and Dominic's work, you guys do such a great job working with the residents of our county. So I think those are crucial positions I'd love to help.
Yeah, the first of those is already posted, so they can access through the county's main portal and jobs. So Save Our Lagoon program, Natural Resources Office.
Brandon, maybe if you could get a post or something together, I'd love to push that out and help. Along with that, helping find candidates, I had a conversation with Heather a couple months ago regarding the new county rule about 8 years on an advisory committee. And so that does cover our advisory committee. So we are limited to 8 years. And so that means next year there are 7 people on this committee who have been here from the beginning and built the plane as we've flown it. And so that will be our last time. So I never think it's too early to start thinking about succession planning and identifying people that we feel would be good for those roles and starting to get them involved and on board. One of the past committee members said, it took me a whole year and a half just to catch up, so or to get caught up. And so I've been trying to give Don as much information as I could, and all that keeps happening is he teaches me stuff. So I don't know I don't know how that's working, but I do think it's very important for the work that we've done and the information that we have to be passed on. So I don't never think it's too early to start thinking about that. And I don't know, Heather, if you wanted to add anything to that, or if I covered it. All right. All right. That's it. Any other comments? Laura Lee, please.
Yeah, I just want to thank you today for your emphasis on the fisheries, because, Brevard County, the Indian River Lagoon in Brevard County used to be probably, I would think it was probably the most productive estuary in the whole state as far as commercial fishery landings. And after the commercial fisheries, it no longer became possible for anyone to make a living on the river. The recreational fishing guides continued to still make really good livings on what was left, but even they can't make a living now. And so, I always tell people when the lagoon recovers, to where the commercial fishing industry and the recreational fishing industry are thriving again the way they once did, then the lagoon it'll be recovered. So the fisheries are important. They're the bedrock of everything that's going on in the lagoon, and I really appreciate your emphasis on the fisheries today. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was at that meeting in Titusville. Thank you, Laura Lee, for letting us know about it. And by the way, the only words I mentioned during that, so there wouldn't be any sunshine violation, was we need clam farmers. That's the only thing I said during the whole thing. So there was no sunshine violation with Laura Lee and I there. But I just want to express, how many boating captains showed up. They kept having to grab more chairs and more chairs because it was such a big crowd. And I know Dr. Herrero's survey presented, a lot of these struggles that they had, but there was so much excitement in that room because of how good Mosquito Lagoon is doing, that a lot of the captains and fishermen really left with inspiration. And I think that's something that we should all be proud of, the work that we've done. So, all right, with that, I will close. Oh, yes, Charlie.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up from our last meeting. We had a great discussion on glyphosates. We had our different municipalities come in, but we kind of left it on just hanging, I thought. And, I think we have some options to look at some potential programs. I guess we could do nothing. That would be one option. Or we could recommend a ban on glyphosates at the other extreme, which counties have done, even though counties on the Chesapeake Bay have done that. But so we heard a lot, and we know that, it's not, we're really kind of hooked on, we're addicted to glyphosates in some ways. And Dr. Fox's presentation had some interesting revelations that the toxicity, to him, the bigger problem was the nutrient loading from phosphorus. And as I think we know, phosphorus is really the limiting nutrient. I know we spend a lot of time on nitrogen, but phosphorus is also a very significant factor. So that is, we know that's adding to the lagoon burden, plus the half-life, and you talked about the half-life, and it varies depending on a lot of conditions, aerobic and sunshine. But I think it was an average of 20 days. But, if there's a pound of glyphosate, in 20 days, it's half a pound. So it hasn't all gone away. It's still there, and it still has a lot of those characteristics, and it is a toxin. So I'm kind of thinking that we should still pursue this, if nothing else from at least an educational standpoint to citizens, because we don't need to use glyphosates as much as we probably do. I mean, I see people in my HOA, and they spray at the firm almost indiscriminately. So there's an educational component. So I'm not suggesting we ban it. Not that I wouldn't support that, but I am suggesting that we maybe look into an integrated weed management. Integrated pest management is used in a lot of situations for farming, and there's integrated weed management could also be used in this application. I don't know if IFAS has a program on that, where they talk about that. Maybe they could bring a speaker in, but we did hear a lot of different ways of controlling weeds that that don't involve glyphosates. So I wanted to put that out there. I mean, I'd be glad to help put some words together with county staff to maybe come up with some ideas. Maybe we can bring in a speaker who is well-educated on integrated weed management.
Laura Lee?
Yeah, to follow up on that, I was lucky enough to get to see Dr. Fox's presentation again at the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program Management Board meeting last week. And he emphasized that, in his opinion, it wasn't the glyphosate itself, but it was the eutrophication, the rotting of the plants, because the glyphosate attacks the plants and it kills everything. It starts out in the roots and it goes up through the leaves, and the plants tip over and die and they rot and they create muck. And so it's not just the chemical itself, but it is the result of what the chemical does is in his opinion, is even worse than the application of the chemical. So I agree with Charlie. The harvesting of the plants and then weighing them and figuring out how much nutrients we're removing is a lot better than spraying them with poison and then letting them rot in the water and create even more nutrients in the water.
Yes, Lorraine.
And just to support what Laura Lee and Charlie said, and things that stand out in my mind with the presentations we've had are the impact on the manatee, for one. But also, the last presentation, I think it was Satellite Beach, when they talked about, and they didn't talk a lot about it, but it really stuck out for me, was that over time they were seeing less maintenance. So with the mechanical harvesting. So it's a big burden initially, and then over time, and that really interested me. But this, particularly this integrated pest management or weed management is intriguing. So, yeah, I would love to see us move forward, learn more about that.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you all so much. See you all next month.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.